welcome to Theological Education Day. It's good to see you all. My job today is to moderate, and our admissions officer, Waldo, kindly gave me bios, but I actually know who all these people are, so I think I'll do it. I didn't like these people. Well, more or less. I should use the bio to remember that I teach ecclesiastical history here, and I'm the Dean for Faculty and Academic Affairs. I'm going to introduce our speakers according to the order in which they speak, beginning with Laura Nasrallah, to our far left here, who is a professor of New Testament, and she's also director of the ThD program, or the Doctor of Theology program. To her right is Dudley Rose, who teaches in the Ministry Studies program and is also our director of the MDiv program. To his right is Dan McKanan, who is professor of UU Studies, and he directs our MTS program, our Master of Theological Studies. And to my immediate left is Associate Dean for Student Services and Enrollment, Maritza Hernandez. So with that, Laura, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and I'm going to speak first and then sadly leave you after having welcomed you because I have a class in the next period, but I'm sure that any questions that you have could be answered by the panel, particularly Professor Madigan, who sat on the Doctoral Committee. I certainly receive a lot of emails from people who have questions about the ThD program, so feel free to contact me as well. So I'm here to talk with you about the ThD program, and a few of you here may be thinking immediately of applying into that program, but many of you who are thinking about a ThM or an MDiv or an MTS may also have in the back of your mind, might I go on for doctoral work? So hopefully I'm addressing a broad audience here. The ThD program at Harvard trains students in the appropriate linguistic, historical, comparative, analytical, or constructive skills for research in religious and theological studies. We train people in order to go out and to teach at colleges, seminaries, and universities, and to be able to be broadly conversant in problems and thinking about religion and theology in the world today. We have a few different subfields, which I'll name for you, that people apply into: comparative religion, ethics, Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, history of Christianity, New Testament and early Christianity, religion and society, religion, gender, culture, and theology. In order to apply to the ThD, what we would like to see from people is a master's degree that has strong training in religion and theology, or an MDiv. But perhaps more important than these sort of boring issues about what we are and what we require for application is the broader question of practical things. What does the doctoral program look like, and what is the ethos of the program? So I want to mainly mention those things to you. If you're thinking about applying now or later into a doctoral program, one thing you may want to know about our program is that you don't necessarily need to apply only to one person. In fact, you won't apply only to one person. You will want to identify someone who can really support your work and help you, but one of the things that I love about working here is that there is a lot of teamwork, and that if you apply into a doctoral program here, you can be assured that if your advisor turns out to be exceedingly cranky or gets sick or has some sort of issue, there's a broad range of people who can help you to study, and we do try to do this as a team. The application for doctoral work goes through two processes. You apply not only into your subfield, for me, New Testament and early Christianity, but also to a panel of evaluators who may be in Buddhism and Hebrew Bible and theology and religion, gender, culture. And that's part of the training that we try to do for you. We try to help you to become the kind of people who can speak broadly about religion. Maybe in your heart of hearts, all you really want to think about is 1 Corinthians 11, and that's fine with me as a New Testament scholar, but I would want you to be able to say, why is that important in conversations in religion and society today? What does that have to do with the ways in which people think about Scripture or don't think about Scripture in Hinduism, in Buddhism, in Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, among Jewish communities as well? So we try to keep you as applicants and keep you as candidates in a broad conversation about religion. One question that I get a lot is, should I apply to the ThD or to the PhD? And I can tell you that we have been trying and continue to work to make these into really one program conceptually. Funding-wise, there are two different lines, which are also equivalent, so you don't need to worry that you'll be cheapskated if you get into the ThD or the PhD. But they're really one program, and this too speaks to our ethos. One thing that both ThDs and PhDs are required to do in their very first semester here is to attend a common seminar. And what we're trying to do there is two things. First of all, to create a community. Hopefully those will be the sorts of people that you can pick up a phone and talk with them, you know, when you're 5 or 6 years out, and say those secret words that no one really says, which are, what is your salary? Is the offer I'm getting the right one? Oh my gosh, I have to teach on Hinduism tomorrow and I don't know anything about it. Help me, right? So we're trying to form a cohort in that first seminar, a cohort of people that can be collegial and take care of each other through the years. The second thing that we're trying to do is to train you broadly in theory and method in the study of religion, so that when you go out, you'll be able to speak to broad issues in the humanities, you'll be able to speak to other scholars in religion and theology. That's one very important part of the program, and one part that shows the ways in which our PhDs and ThDs are sitting in the same room working together. The doctoral program as a whole, you know, I can tell you the wonkish details. You do 2 years of coursework, you have a board of general examinations, you write a prospectus, you finish your dissertation, hopefully in a few years, write a 5 to 7 year program usually. But what we're trying to do is train you in two ways. First, to train you in depth, right? You need to have certain philological skills, certain knowledge in your particular subfield, and we try to really provide that for you. The second thing we try to provide is height. Maybe there's a mountain in front of your face that you do or you don't know about, and its name is Hegel. We want to make sure that that mountain does not obscure you, that you can scale that mountain and be able to say, what does the field look like? Why do people argue this way about history? Why do people define religion or society this way? It's another thing we're trying to do. Finally, I just want to mention to you that I think that this is a really transformative place to work and study. I myself came through the program here and went off to teach somewhere else, and that was a wonderful palate cleanser, but I'm very grateful to be back here. It's a transformative place. Your teachers, I hope, will transform you, even as we faculty are transformed by each other. This is the sort of place where I hear from other students about what my colleagues are doing in their classrooms, and I think, I want to be a better teacher, so that people say that sort of thing about me. I hear at lunches about what my colleagues are researching, and I think that's really fascinating. I want to think more deeply about that. So I think that teachers will transform you, because no one wants to be a slouch in the faculty in this crowd. We're always trying to be better, teachers and researchers. But I think even more, you may come to transform each other. So my experience as a student here was late night conversations, really cracking open of all different ways of thinking. Personally speaking, the godparents to 2 of my 3 children are colleagues I had in the programs here, dear friends. The third hasn't gotten baptized just because I don't have time. So I would really say that this is, in my opinion, a wonderful, warm, and transformative intellectual and personal place to be. Again, if you do have questions about the ThD program that aren't answered on the website, please feel free to shoot me an email. And I hope to see some of you around campus.
Thanks so much, Laura.
That was a beautiful testimony to the Divinity School as a whole, as well as to the ThD program. And I would certainly want to echo that in the MDiv degree, in which students will come and spend 3 years in that year that has you up late at night talking about things that are important to you. Let me frame the Master of Divinity program a little bit historically. I'm not going to go back to 16 whatever. But in most Master of Divinity programs in theological schools, and particularly Protestant theological schools, there has been a tradition that they were designed actually to prepare people for ordained ministries. That was their you can't hear? Is this mic on? All right, thank you. They were originally designed to prepare people for ordained ministries. Most of the denominations today require that degree still. And many of the students who come here, many of you, will be thinking of that track. About half of our MDiv students go on to some form of church or church-related ministries or ordained ministries. But what we began to find was that there were two things that over the last quarter century really began to happen. We had a lot of people who not only did ordained ministry, but they also went on to PhDs or ThDs. That's been actually a long time trend, often going to teach in seminaries. But then we had people going off into other professional schools, to law school, to medical school. We had them going off into NGOs or maybe secondary school teaching, any number of vocations and professions, and far too many to name. And so we began to understand that our MDiv degree, through a broader conception of ministry over what we were doing here. And in addition, what we found was that we had students who wanted to do a Master of Divinity degree, a degree that's been designed for forming Protestant ministers, but guess what? They were Buddhists, they were Hindus, they were Jews, they were any number or none, that category that seems to be gaining some traction. And they had to kind of figure out, how do I make a degree that's designed for something else work for me as a Hindu, or me as a Muslim. So what we did several years ago now was we changed the MDiv program so that it is anchored by religious tradition. So when you come to this MDiv degree program, you decide what tradition, or you tell us what tradition you're preparing for your vocation. It could be any religion, that we have courses within the whole scope of Harvard University. I think that's an important thing to just say as a sidebar. When you come to the Divinity School as a master's student or a doctoral student, you are a citizen of this university, and you have that great smorgasbord of courses and faculty across this university at your fingertips, as well as 9 other schools in the theological schools in the Boston Theological Institute. You can come, you're here, you decide what religious tradition you're in, and then our requirements for this degree program are largely distribution requirements. We have a required course when you come in, Intro to Ministry Studies. It's not unlike what you heard about the Common Seminar for doctoral students from Laura. It builds a cohort. There are people with whom you begin your study and will be together in classes for 3 years. But largely, the program is going to be distribution based around your religious tradition. So if you're a Christian, just to use that as an easy example, Scripture is one of the distribution categories. 3 courses in Scripture for you are going to be Old Testament, New Testament typically, or Hebrew Bible. If you are a Hindu, it may be the Vedas. It may be, similarly, there's a broad category of histories, theologies, and practices, which are the kind of meat on the bones of any religious tradition. And again, those would fall out based on what religious tradition we're in. We also require that you have 3 courses in other religions, because no matter what tradition you're in, we are hoping that you will develop a breadth of understanding of other traditions, and not just learning about them, but learning from them. And I want to just say a word about that. Though you will come and have the opportunity to focus your degree on a particular religious tradition, you are going to be in classes right from the very beginning with people in many religious traditions or in many different denominations. That's the nature of this place. And there are 2 choices when you have that kind of diversity. One choice is a very bland choice, and that is nobody says anything that would offend anyone else. And so basically nobody says anything. Or you figure out a way to talk about who you are, talk with authenticity, with commitment, at the same time that you leave space for others to do the same thing. That's an art. It's an important art in this place. It's an important art in this world, I would say. And so that you'll learn to do that in classes, talking about your own spiritual path in any number of ways. How do I say who I am as Christopher Stendhal used to say, without calling other people names. So I'll leave it at that. I'd rather answer your questions than bore you a lot further, but I hope that gives you at least some idea of how the program would work for you.
Thank you so much, Dudley. Dan, before we get to Dan, I just wanted to say two things. First of all, I forgot to welcome those of us who are following us on web via web stream, live stream, whatever one calls that, I don't know. Just missed that by generation. Second thing I want to say about Dan is it is true that he's our professor of UU studies, but did use his professional title. But in addition to that, he is a professor of American religious history with a wide range of interests and courses, and particularly in the history of liberal religious traditions in America, about which he's just published a really terrific new book, available on Amazon right there. You don't have to read it, but do buy it. So Dan.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's my pleasure to talk about our Master of Theological Studies degree. This is a 2-year degree that prepares people for a variety of career paths and personal goals, with the common thread being simply a deep knowledge of some aspect of religion. The hallmarks of the curriculum are diversity and flexibility. You have a choice of 18 different areas of focus. You have a choice of dozens of courses each semester. There are no specific courses that are required of all MTS students. There's a handout that's going on that provides some of the same information I'll be talking about. As an MTS student, you'd have the freedom to take advantage of opportunities that are present because we have an MDiv program, such as Field Ed, not required, but an option for you in the MTS. And you also have the freedom to take advantages of opportunities throughout Harvard and throughout the Boston Theological Institute, the consortium of other seminaries and schools of theology in our neighborhood. Though the degree is extremely flexible, we seek to help all MTS students achieve 6 basic goals, which are listed on the handout. In a nutshell, MTS students achieve depth, goal number 1, in one area, and a breadth of understanding of multiple areas within the study of religion. They gain facility with theories and methods, that's goal 3, while engage in issues of diversity and oppression, goal 4. They gain skills for connecting knowledge to a variety of professional paths, including further academic study, goals 5 and 6. As you look at this degree, you might be a bit bedazzled by the list of 18 areas of focus. Some of you will be thinking, I'm interested in all of these, how can I possibly choose? Others of you may be thinking, the particular thing I'm most passionate about is not on this list. Does this mean that Harvard is not right for me? So I'm going to say a little bit about how we came up with the list of 18. We looked at our faculty and course offerings and asked, what are some of the ways that a student could construct a coherent program of study? And we began listing those ways, and when we got to 18, we quit. So by identifying an area of focus, we are saying we have the faculty and the course offerings in that area that will serve you well if you want to go deeply into that particular topic. We are not saying that we lack the faculty and course offerings for other topics. We're just saying you would need to do your own research about that, to look and say, oh, I want to do this. Oh, yeah, that course would work, that course would work, this professor would be a really good mentor. Sometimes that'll be the answer you come up with. Other times you'll look and you'll say, oh, you know, it really does seem that what I want to do isn't the right fit here. I'll be available throughout the day today. If you have questions about whether your interests fit with our strengths, I can definitely help you with that, as can others here. It's also important to stress that an area of focus is not a major. It doesn't appear on your transcript. It's just a tool that we use with you to help make sure that your work coheres in some way. It may be that some of you who think you need an area of focus that's not on that list would actually choose courses that would fit within one of the existing areas. And I can talk to you about that today. If you wind up enrolling a year from now, I can talk to you about it a year from now. The implication of the flexibility of the curriculum is that advising is very important. It's important that you seek guidance from your advisor, from other faculty members, from your peers, from doctoral students you may encounter, to make sure that your program coheres in a way that's right for you. Simply taking 6 randomly selected courses within a particular area of focus will not guarantee that coherence. You need to do that work for yourself with the support of people who are here to support you. Finally, I want to say a little bit, I should say a little bit about the specific requirements. 6 courses inside your area of focus, 4 courses that are significantly beyond that area of focus, demonstration of intermediate level competency in at least one language relevant to your program. Lots of different ways to make those 3 things happen. I want to say a little bit about, for those of you who are trying to discern whether the MDiv or the MTS is the right degree for you. That is a very tricky question for many people, and there are no obvious, straightforward answers. When we look at the career paths that our graduates follow, they don't neatly sort out by degrees. Many MTS graduates pursue careers in academic teaching and research, but so do quite a few MDiv graduates. Many MDiv graduates pursue careers in professional ministry, but so do some MTS folks. The largest cluster of our graduates, about 40% of the total pool, will pursue work in fields other than academia as traditionally defined and ministry as traditionally defined. And that 40% is split evenly between the 2 degrees. So for a few of you, it's going to be an easy choice. If you have a very, very specific interest you want to pursue and you need maximum flexibility to pursue that, often perhaps if you're combining a degree here with a degree in another professional school, the flexibility of the MTS will probably make it right for you. If you're contemplating professional ordained ministry in any tradition, you'll probably find the MDiv to be well tailored to your needs, unless you're already an ordained minister. But for those of you who are looking at academic careers, at activist or service professions, you're probably going to need to follow your gut. And before you make that choice, you should talk to a lot of other people and get a feel for the different flavors of the 2 programs.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Dan. Well, Maritza wears many, many hats around here and has worn many additional hats in her time here, and she's kindly agreed to introduce the Master of Theology program.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Is this working? Yeah. Welcome. I'm excited to be part of the people that are welcoming you to HDS today. And so it gives me great pleasure to talk about the ThM, the Master of Theology. The Master of Theology is one of our smaller programs. We usually enroll between 3 and 5 students into that program each year. It's a 1-year program for students who already hold a Master's of Divinity degree or equivalent. And it's meant for people that are looking to gain additional competency in the field that they're in, be it ministry or academia, teaching. They're wanting to take some time from what they've been doing and come back to an academic setting to explore a question further in an academic setting. Generally, that's the type of student that we have in that program. We've also, in the past, have had students who are wanting to continue to prepare or strengthen their application for doctoral work. So they feel they need an additional year of academic study in order to apply for a doctoral program. The program offers the same as the Master of Theological Studies. You have 18 areas of focus that you can select from to focus on. The students in that program are very self-directed and work very independently, and also closely with a professor and academic advisor that guides their work and while they're here. There's a language requirement. It's similar to the MTS. They have to show intermediate competency in a language that's pertinent to what they're studying. And students complete a research paper at the end of the academic year, in which they have to defend through oral examination. And there's an option of doing one large research paper that it ranges in length from 40 to 60 pages, or two research papers that range between 30 and 40, 20 and 30 pages long. And that is something you decide along with your academic advisor as to which direction you want to go into. And again, that's sort of defended in front of a small committee that you and your academic advisor decide on and defend orally at the end of the academic year. And so that is actually the THM in a nutshell, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Maritza, thank you so much. We're going to about 10:50 today, so we have plenty of time, really quite a lot of time, and thanks to you all for keeping things brief. We have plenty of time to entertain your questions. Obviously, our ThD director is not here anymore, so her stipend will be quite a lot smaller than the one that the rest of us get today. But
I think percentage basis.
Percentage basis. Yes, right. But I think all four of us up here could entertain questions on the ThD program. So why don't we begin over here, and if you would just stand up so everybody can hear your question. If necessary, I'll repeat the question, but just boom it out if you can. Thanks.
I'm interested in a Master's of Divinity, and I'm wondering how that would pair with a Master's in Education.
I'm going to turn to Maritza here very quickly to answer that. We do have people who as I said, will pursue either at the same time or in serial fashion two different professional degrees or two different professions. At the university, the arrangements among the schools for doing that vary, and that's why I'm going to turn to Maritza, because she knows how they vary more than I do.
Well, like Dudley said, we do have a number of students that are doing joint degrees with a number of the professional schools here at Harvard. With the School of Education, it's a tougher one that we're not haven't been able to do at the moment because their program is a one-year program. So typically the students that are interested in combining the degree here with their interest in education take advantage through cross-registration, where they're part of their coursework they take at the School of Education combined with the courses here. But at the moment we don't have a way where students do both concurrently, mostly because of logistical issues, since their program is a one-year program.
And let me just say a word about that cross-registration piece, because I can speak to that. Because of the fact that distribution is the main way in which your requirements are met within the MDiv, often there will be courses, for example, at the Ed School or many other schools, which would count for the histories, theologies, and practices of one's tradition. So they won't necessarily be only electives, and so people quite successfully do that kind of combination. If you're looking for 2 degrees, you're probably looking at 4 years.
Yes. Yes.
Unless it's an MBA from the Harvard Business School. That strikes me as a good combination. You could serve God and mammon simultaneously.
It's easy to serve God when you have a lot of mammon.
Yes, absolutely. Why don't we go to this side right here, gentlemen? Yeah.
How would the Masters of Divinity program provide a program for Muslims who want to get into ministry for Islam?
That's a really good and important question, and one that I'm not sure I'll give you a completely satisfactory answer to. When we devised this program that you can earn a Master of Divinity in a variety or in one of many religious traditions. It's not quite the equivalent to saying this is like going to rabbinical school, or this is like going to the whatever requirements or meeting whatever requirements your Buddhist teacher has. So what you would be prepared here would be a couple of things that I think are important. There's coursework in Islam, in languages, in Arabic, in histories, in Quran, throughout the university and in the divinity school. So you'd have you could build a solid grounding in the academic study of Islam. You could also do field education placements. That would be in local mosques, that could be in any number of our non-sectarian field education placements. You would also gain what I think many people coming to this program as Muslims gain is how does religious leadership work within this society and culture, in this diverse society and culture. So it's not going to say you're now going to go back to Indonesia and be prepared to minister there. You might be, but more likely what it's going to do is allow you to combine the sensibilities of your own tradition and the way in which religion and religious leadership function within this society and culture. All of that is to finesse any authorization, in other words, of recognition within your tradition. That would be handled by however, whatever affiliations you had within Islam. That's actually not so different from even in Christianity, right? We prepare people for ordained ministry, but we don't ordain anybody. The denominations do that. So in that sense, you would be in a common situation with many of our students and would be working, as Dan and others said, closely with advisors, because I think that mapping on what you need for what trajectory you have in mind and what Harvard has that can help you do that is not a simple algorithmic kind of thing. Does that help at all?
Yes. That's awesome.
If I could just piggyback on that, if you're in the MDiv program preparing for ordained or otherwise certified ministry in a particular tradition, when you meet with your advisor, you should bring the information you have about what your tradition expects of you. And your advisor should be able to walk with you how you meet Harvard's demands and your tradition's demands simultaneously.
Two questions. One is related to, are you allowed as a divinity student in any of these programs to take classes outside of the divinity school at Harvard, say in like an English department, and the second question is, for enrollment in the MTS or the MDiv, is there possibility to switch programs within the divinity school if you discern something different?
Well, yes, students can cross-register with any of the graduate schools at Harvard. For most of the programs, you can take up to half your coursework at cross-registering with other schools at the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, as well as the professional schools. But also the Boston Theological Institute, which is a consortium of 10 schools around the Boston metro area. So that includes Boston University, Boston College, Andover Newton Theological Seminary, to name a few. So these are all opportunities to cross-register and take courses across the university and in the other theological schools. Your second question was?
Switching degrees.
Switching degrees. Well, it's something that we prefer not happen. That at the time that you're applying at the program, that you're applying to the one that you feel is the best fit for you, and we try to provide as much information as we can to help you make that decision so that you're applying to the right program. Having said that, we do have students that once they're here, they find that one is a better fit than the other, and there is a process in which students can apply to switch.
Good morning, I'm Jennifer from Spelman College, and I'm looking to get my Master's of Theological Studies, but I wanted to know when is the requirement, the language requirement given to you determined for your coursework?
So you're saying by what point do you have to meet the language requirement?
Or when, I know, is there a specific documentation that allows you to choose the language, or when is that?
Yeah, you can choose any language that's appropriate to your program of study, as long as there are resources here for pursuing that language. And there are a variety of ways to meet the requirement on the MTS side. You can meet it by taking a test, and you could do that towards the beginning of your program or towards the end. You can meet it through coursework. I don't think any of us mentioned the summer language program. This is something that probably a majority of our students take advantage of. You can do the equivalent of 2 semesters worth of language study during the summer. So if you're starting from square one with a language to reach intermediate competence, sometimes that's 3 semesters, sometimes it's 4, right? But you could get at least halfway through with that in the summer before you enroll through the summer language program. In many cases, you're not starting at the beginning. You may just need to augment your language skills. On the MDiv side, it is a little bit different. MDiv students have to take 3 semesters worth of language study, regardless of how proficient or not they are when they start. But also in that case, many do get 2 of those 3 semesters achieved the summer before they begin, or a different summer. Yes, please.
I was wondering how one that has a very interdisciplinary, esoteric area of focus can determine a fit. For example, let's say one is interested in the nexus between psychology, philosophy, and religion. Is there room or flexibility to pursue something that's that interdisciplinary? Can you move beyond having half of your courses at HGS and pursuing a more diverse approach within the graduate school system, or is that beyond the framework of the program at Theology?
Yeah, so that discernment is a very consultative one. You would have to have conversations with me in my role as MTS chair. You would have to do some of your own research. Certainly if you come to me saying, I've noticed that these 3 people in the psychology department have interests that really connect to religion. I, as someone who doesn't know anybody in the psychology department, would say, oh, that's really interesting and helpful to know. If there are particular people on the Divinity School faculty who you imagine would be logical advisors for the program you have in mind, it would be a good idea to send them an email, or if you're able to chat with them today, to ask them how feasible they think that is. The one hard line that we probably would take that might apply in this case is that we would want to be reassured that there was a substantial focus on religion, broadly defined, in what you want to do. That we would be wary of someone who simply wanted to use the Divinity School as a vehicle for doing something that was really broadly spread across Harvard as a whole. But if you know that there are people in the Faculty of Arts and Sciences or other professional schools who have a strong interest in the study of religion, even if they're people that aren't on our radar screen now, that's great. We will be happy to know about that and to think how that would work.
To which I might just add, or expand on something that Dan said, and it would be, such a person would be well advised, I think, to be in touch with those sorts of people,
right, yes.
before matriculating here at HCS, right? So you're pretty sure the resources do exist. Yeah, please, right here.
I have a question between the distinctions between the ThD and the PhD program. I understand from the website you could apply to both of them.
Yeah.
And it doesn't count against you, could even possibly be accepted to them both. I guess my question is, are there academic requirements that are different in the PhD program than the ThD program, or is there a greater focus through the Divinity, the ThD track, I guess, on more religious or spiritual classes? I'm trying to figure out if there is a difference. I understand I'll just say Dr. Laura mentioned that it's pretty much the same.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to welcome my colleagues to add anything they have to say to what I have to say. But I would say over the past 10 years, the differences between those two programs have almost vanished, and that they're almost identical programs. Everything you said by way of presumption is actually true. You can apply to both programs. You may be accepted into both, and you then choose between the two. I would say this, in the ThD, for the ThD rather, the strengths of the ThD mirror those of the, let's say, the traditional historic strengths of the Divinity School. So we get lots of applicants in the Hebrew Bible, New Testament, history of Christianity, theology, and so forth. While it's more likely that if you were interested in doing a doctorate in, let's say, Asian religions, Islam, even though those traditions are now represented on our faculty and sometimes 2 or 3 deep, it's probably more likely that you'll apply to the PhD. I guess one question I'm not really clear on, and maybe Dan, is there is an introductory year-long course to the study, to the advanced study of religion, which has to do a lot with theory and method. We call it 2001, 2002. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. That's shared. That's now shared. So there was a point at which that was not required for the ThD students. Okay, but then they began agitating to take it because they thought this interesting course and perhaps essential course for taking their place in the American Academy was unavailable to them. So now they think that's
I think the language requirements are structured slightly different between the two, and then the fields are structured differently. So when you apply to the doctoral programs, in each case you're going to have a different list of fields that you might plug yourself into, and sometimes you might realize you need to, so many of the students that I work with would plug themselves in the North American, or the religions, no, let's see, what is it? North American religions field on the PhD side, and the history of Christianity field on the ThD side, for example. These are, all the differences are relics of a past age. None of the differences reflect our current vision for these degrees. Our vision for these degrees is for them to be one. Ordinarily, you would think of applying for both and worry about the differences should you be admitted to both. Oh, the other difference that's probably worth saying is that the ThD absolutely requires that one already have a master's degree. The PhD does not require that, although the overwhelming majority of people who are admitted into the PhD do already have a master's degree.
Somebody over here. Anybody else? 2 more questions? Okay, yeah, right here, please.
I'm just curious as to what a track in the MTS program would look like that has involvement in education and the arts, specifically music.
Yeah. We do, one of the areas of focus is religion, literature, and culture, which would probably, so if one wanted to pursue something kind of at the nexus of religion, education, and music, you would come to me or to your advisor and first say, do the courses that I'm looking at, do enough of them carry that designation that it works within that area of focus, and if they don't, then we would talk about how you might construct a self-designed area of focus. I think with music, we regularly offer a course on religion and music taught by Harry Huff, who's not runs the music for our worship here. In our regular faculty, I don't think we have anybody who has a strong emphasis on music. So you would need to do some of your own research looking at the music department. Are there people there who have a strong interest in religion that could become part of the mix?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Question. I want to get back on language requirements for ThD, PhD program. Mm-hmm. What are the competency levels for applying for the program and then for completion of the degree?
There's two parts to that question. This is we're dodging this. There's the question of what's required in an absolute sense, and there's a question of what you really need to actually get admitted. What you really need to actually get admitted is going to be very specific to the particular area. Certain areas of doctoral study, if you're not already at a pretty advanced language level, you're not going to be a serious candidate. That would be the case for New Testament and Hebrew Bible, and I think for Islam, probably for Buddhist studies. So if you're presently shopping, for a master's degree, but thinking about a doctorate in one of those fields, you really need to talk to your advisor from day one. What amount of language work do I need to do as a master's student to be a strong doctoral candidate? In my field, Religions of the Americas, we're not as uptight about language. We look at doctoral applications. But the question of the specific, is there a specific level of minimal competency before you begin the doctoral program that's across the board?
My understanding, but it should be checked, and if I'm wrong, Bob, would you just destroy that film? Is that, again, it's very program specific, but let's imagine that we're talking about, and Dudley, you've been around for a long time, that's obvious. For certain programs, let's imagine we're talking about Hebrew Bible or New Testament. For Hebrew and Greek, I think the minimum is intermediate level. Is that right?
To be admitted?
Just to be considered, yeah.
I would say that.
Yeah, but even there, I would say maybe the more the better. But it's highly program specific. But I was just generally speaking to be considered in Hebrew Bible, the Asian traditions, New Testament, and so forth. You have to have an intermediate level of competence, and maybe more. I probably would suggest more if you want to be a serious candidate. Okay.
One of the things, too, that to keep in mind is that most of the doctoral programs are going to require, by the time you leave, to have not only the languages specific to that program, but reading in French, German, those kinds of things that are generally expected. You really do want to have as much of the language under your belt as possible. Otherwise, obtaining a lot of language, requiring a lot of language during the course of your doctoral work, it's very, very complicated.
It is, and so this summer would be a good time to get going on languages.
Yeah, what about 8 weeks? And you do the whole year. Great stuff.
Okay, I think we better wrap it up there. Thank you so very much, and we'll see you.